All right, guys, though we acted out or are in the process of acting out, depending on which class you're in, the fall of the Roman Republic and all the main players in the giant soap opera that is in class in much more detail, we figure we just give you an ed puzzle here that'll give you the real basics that you do need to know to do well on assessments and understand what's going on here. So basically, we've already talked about in class how the Republic had started to rot as Rome became imperial. How huge gaps between the rich and the poor had developed, the prevalence of latifundia and slave labor had made unemployment a huge problem. You had roving mobs in Rome itself of unemployed citizens. You had seen attempts at reform bring about the first wave of political violence in Rome, where we see the Gracchi brothers murdered and all those things. And now we've been kind of talking about, though, how the true end of the Republic really is brought about by three individuals who emerge in Roman politics around 60 BC. So you definitely want to know that around 60 BC, we have the Republic basically hijacked. I'm not saying the Republic already wasn't rotten to the core and probably going to fall anyways, but there's no doubt that in 60 BC, when the first triumvirate, as we talked about, is formed, Rome certainly is on its way into becoming an empire, if not having already done so, because of all of the loss of values and the economic pressures caused by the imperialistic policies of the earlier empire. So again, the first triumvirate you definitely want to know is comprised of, first of all, Gaius Julius Caesar, who he's a populare. Now remember, populares were the type of senators who appealed to the people. They were popular political leaders, populus, the Latin word for people. It's where we get your word popular from. So he is the guy who's going to have the love of the people. Also in this triumvirate is Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, or Pompey, anglicized. He's an optimate. He's one of the most famous generals in Rome at this point, 60 BC. He aligns himself with the senatorial class, the conservatives, the people who believe that power should emanate from the fathers of the country, not the people. So he's going to align himself with the optimates. But he's really important because he is certainly the person who's going to have the senators on his side. And last but not least, we have Marcus Licinius Crassus. He is going to bankroll this whole operation. He's the richest man in Rome, and I'm sure you've learned a little more about him from acting this out. So again, you're going to want to know those three members. That's important to understand the first triumvirate. And remember, triumvirate is just three people who are working together behind the scenes who run the show. Okay? Sorry about that. Long story short, though, as we've said, they form this relationship, the three of them, and then they kind of run the show. Julius Caesar goes up to Gaul to conquer that area, and Pompey and Crassus stick around in Rome. Julius Caesar has his daughter Julia marry Pompey, and to kind of solidify the agreement behind the scenes, and things go pretty well for a while until, as we learned in class, Crassus dies fighting in Parthia, and then Julia dies in childbirth. And once those bonds are broken, it pretty much becomes the fact that you have two great men, both angling to run Rome. And so what we're going to get is the fact that as Caesar gains more and more notoriety as being governor of Gaul and gaining more and more wealth and the love of the people, Pompey and the senators get nervous and they want to get rid of him. He's too ambitious. So they basically, as his governorship is coming to an end, tell him that he has to disband his army and he has to come to Rome to face trial. So this obviously isn't going to jive with Caesar, and so he is going to be like, you know what, I either die or I fight. So we're going to get an era of civil war, as we talked about. Caesar crosses the Rubicon River, and we get a civil war between Caesar and Pompey. And we will or have already acted this out in class. Long story short, Caesar defeats Pompey in the civil war. Pompey's going to go down to Egypt. He'll die. He'll get murdered by the Egyptians. Ptolemy the 13th will have him killed. That's the whole Cleopatra thing. Caesar will go to Egypt for a while, yada, yada, yada. But he eventually is going to come back to Rome. He will forgive the Senate, so they're beholden to him. And he will basically become the de facto, which means like besides the fact, not really a name, but an actual deed, the de facto ruler of Rome. And again, we've went through this in class, but there's Caesar, there's Pompey, and there's Crassus. So basically, about the year 48 BC, Caesar is now the de facto emperor. But we don't call him the first emperor because he really tries to skirt that fact. But basically, since he forgave the Senate after the Civil War because they had sided with Pompey, they all owe him their lives. So he basically is like, all right, you do what I say. And they're going to pretty much go along with this for a while. So for about 4 years, Caesar is pretty much ruling the Roman Empire, even though he keeps the Senate, he keeps all that stuff. And everybody kind of feels okay because it looks like our Republican government, but it really isn't. You have one guy running the entire show. Now, he'll do some good things. He'll do a lot of reforms, such as public works. He'll also reorganize all the governments in the provinces. He'll expand some citizenship to other people in the Roman Empire. And also, one of the big things, he's going to introduce a new calendar based off the Egyptian calendar. And that calendar is going to pretty much be the calendar of Western Europe for about 1,600 years until Pope Gregory is going to take it, change some things, and it becomes our modern calendar. But it's why you have months like July, Julius, July, August is going to be a later person, Augustus, the first real emperor, and January, the Roman god Janus. You're going to have a lot of months in this calendar that are going to have Roman origins. We'll talk a little bit more about that in class. Anyhow, moving on. So Caesar's doing some good things, but one of the bad things he does is he makes himself made dictator for life. And when he does that, the Senate's going to start to be like, wait a second, we can't keep ignoring this. Like, this guy's acting like a king. We all know in Rome, king is a bad word. So a group of senators are going to plot to kill Caesar, and they want to get rid of him. And they will do this in March 15th, 44 BC, where Caesar is going to be assassinated in the Senate by a bunch of angry senators led by Marcus Junius Brutus. That name should sound familiar. His great-great ancestor was Junius Brutus, the first guy who helped kick out the last king of Rome way back in 509 BC. So that's kind of cool. So they kill Caesar, but it doesn't work out for them because the Roman people are really mad. They liked Caesar, obviously. He's a populare. And the people are going to rise up and chase out the assassins. And you're basically going to get this giant power vacuum. So you're not going to get the Republic back ever. It's already gone. It's already rotted. It's already done. Now, one of the famous quotes, allegedly, I don't think it was actually said, but when they act this out in Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare and whatnot, it is said that they said "Sic semper tyrannis," which is "and thus to tyrants." Did that really happen? We don't know. It might have not. But if you ever see that, you can attribute it back to what people think happened at the assassination of Julius Caesar, which again we did in class. And then the assassins flee to the east. And instead of getting a rebirth of the Republic, we are going to get a new triumvirate. Just a cool map to look at. We would have looked at this in class. Everything in pink is Rome at the time of the first triumvirate. And then Caesar, this is where he is conquering for those 10 years up here, conquering the Gauls, even though going over to England. And then we'll see there's some tributary states like Egypt. And we've to see that they had a big thing, a big deal in these Roman civil wars. Anyhow, last slide. We're going to get a second triumvirate, a second group of three people kind of running the show. You're going to have Mark Antony or Marcus Antonius. He's Caesar's best general and was his co-consul when he was assassinated. So he has the loyalty of Caesar's legions. You're going to get the real dark horse here, who is Gaius Octavius, who we talked about. He's Caesar's nephew. Out of nowhere, in Caesar's will, after his death, he adopts him as his only son, and that means that Octavian has Caesar's blessing. So all of a sudden, he's thrust onto the stage out of nowhere. And then we have Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. He's not that important. He's pretty much Caesar's head of cavalry, but he's a powerful patrician. So he's kind of necessary at first, but nobody really cares about Lepidus, as we will see. At first, the three of them are going to fight one another. Then they're going to be like, wait a second. We have to go deal with the army. We have to go deal with the army that's being formed by the assassins of Julius Caesar. So they had fled to the east, into the Greek areas. They were forming a new army. This is Marcus Brutus and Cassius and all those guys, and they were going to come back to try to take over Rome and reinstitute the Republic. So these three, the second triumvirate here, they're going to be like, nah, we got to get rid of them. So they're going to march to Greece. They're always fighting in Greece. It's like a nice middle point. They're going to fight a big battle in Greece against the assassins of Caesar. They're going to defeat them. They're all going to die. Those people dying being the assassins, Marcus Brutus, etc. And after that, these three men are going to decide, why not, instead of fighting, why don't we split up the empire? So they'll split the empire. Mark Antony, or Marcus Antonius, will get Egypt in the east. There, he will fall for Cleopatra, who was already Caesar's baby mama. So that's kind of odd and weird, but hey, she knows that she needs to stay close to power out there. Octavian will keep Italy and Gaul, and Lepidus gets Spain and North Africa because no one really cares. Lepidus eventually dies, big whoop-de-doo, but at that point, you're going to get Antony and Octavian kind of staring each other down across the Mediterranean. We, again, talked about this in class. In the end, they're going to come to another civil war, and in that civil war, Octavian in 31 BC is going to defeat Antony or Antonius and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. Okay, and after that, we literally have the fall of the Roman Republic. It's done by this point. It already has been. But for all intents and purposes, once Octavian is the last man standing, it is over. He is going to become the first emperor, and he's going to get a nifty name change, and they're going to call him Augustus, the exalted one, or the revered one. And he'll be, we'll count him as the first emperor of Rome by 31 BC. Republic gone. They lost it. It's over. With their greed and their corruption and their gap between the rich and the poor and their mobs in Rome, it's all gone. That wonderful republic that's lasted from 509 BC to 31 BC, it is over. And just, it's a good thing to look at because we live in a republic. And if we fall into the vices of ambition and greed, the same thing can happen to us. So it's a good way for you to look at yourselves as good citizens who put the state in our country above your own ambitions. And I think it's something that everybody should hearken back to, lest we repeat the mistakes of the past. But this is basically it. This is everything in a nutshell. Now, obviously, we got much more into this in the classroom. So obviously, this is basically the stuff you really need to know. But hopefully, you did enjoy acting this all out and getting much more in detail with the sordid soap opera that is the fall of the Roman Republic.